Have you ever felt it? That quiet suspicion that something is deeply wrong, even as the world insists you should be fine. You have food, comfort, entertainment, distractions. By all accounts, you should feel alive, and yet you don't. You scroll, you consume, you laugh on cue. But when the noise fades, a silence remains that no screen can drown out. This silence is not peace, it is decay. And Nietzsche saw it coming. He warned that men would trade struggle for sedation, discipline for excuses, and meaning for comfort, that in the pursuit of happiness they would abandon themselves. This is not a video about motivation, it is an autopsy of what happens when men ignore the warnings, when they mistake obedience for virtue, silence for strength, comfort for success. And what you'll hear tonight is not gentle, it is not polite, it is the brutal truth Nietzsche left for those willing to confront it. Because the question is no longer whether the world is broken, the question is, how long will you keep ignoring the signs before you break with it? If you're ready to hear what most men refuse to face, stay. Subscribe to Mind Mythos, share this with someone who needs the truth, and let's begin. He does not starve, he does not hunt. He lives in a world where survival has been replaced with convenience. And yet, he feels weaker than the men who came before him. Hours vanish in the glow of a screen, scrolling, tapping, swiping, chasing a chemical spark inside the brain. It feels like rest, like freedom, but it is neither. It is sedation. The science is not hidden. Dopamine is the brain's signal for reward. Once it came from the kill, the discovery, the hard-won struggle. Now it comes in infinite microbursts, a like, a clip, a swipe, a notification. Each one is small, meaningless on its own, but together they form a cage. A man believes he is choosing entertainment. In truth, his choices are being chosen for him. Psychologists call it the cycle of instant gratification. The brain learns to demand rewards now. Not later, not earned, not delayed. Meals arrive without effort. Porn delivers intimacy without love. Games simulate victory without danger. The system rewards the body for doing nothing, while the mind withers under the illusion of achievement. Nietzsche warned of this centuries ago, though he never saw a glowing screen. He said that suffering was not the enemy. Suffering sharpened the will. What destroyed men was comfort, not the kind that soothes the body, but the kind that numbs the soul. When the will is left unfed, when struggle is removed, the man decays long before he realizes it. Look closer at his routine. He wakes tired, not because he worked, but because his nights dissolved into endless consumption. He scrolls not to learn, but to forget. The silence of his own thoughts terrifies him, so he fills it with noise. Each moment is a transaction. Distraction, purchased with time. The currency is his life. This is not freedom. This is a laboratory experiment without walls. Rats press levers for sugar water. Men press screens for dopamine. Both starve, not from lack of food, but from lack of meaning. Nietzsche would not call this living. He would call it dying in slow motion. And here lies the hidden truth. Comfort does not soothe. It sedates. Each hit of pleasure makes him more hollow, more obedient, more estranged from himself. He tells himself he is resting, when in reality he is running, not from the world, but from the confrontation waiting in the mirror. And this is where Nietzsche enters, not to comfort you, but to confront you. Nietzsche never wrote to console. His words were not crafted to soothe the wounded or comfort the lost. They were weapons, sharpened to cut through illusions, aimed at those strong enough to face them. He did not believe in building shelters for the weak. He believed in holding up a mirror so brutal that only the brave could look into it without turning away. The weak, he argued, crave comfort. They seek happiness, safety, reassurance. They invent moral codes, not to elevate themselves, but to disguise their fear of pain. To Nietzsche, happiness was not a destination. It was sedation, a trick designed to keep the herd docile. He despised the idea of life as a search for pleasure. What he demanded was meaning, and meaning is never born from ease. Look at the pattern. Weak men avoid the truth because it destabilizes them. They want simple rules, clear commands, a script to follow so they never have to face the terror of freedom. Nietzsche called this herd morality, a system built to keep men small, obedient, and polite. The herd rewards submission with belonging and punishes strength with exile. Most men, afraid of standing alone, choose obedience. They mistake it for virtue. Strong men, in contrast, do not run from the weight of reality. They embrace it. They know that responsibility is not chains but fuel. It is struggle that hardens the will. They reject the narcotic of shallow happiness and instead confront the abyss of existence. For Nietzsche, this confrontation was not despair. It was the beginning of creation. Only in struggle does man discover who he is. But look around today. The mirror Nietzsche once held up has been discarded. Men are told that ambition is dangerous, that strength is toxic, that struggle is a symptom of failure. They are encouraged to soften, to apologize, to dissolve into the crowd. They are told to chase comfort as if it were life's highest prize. And in obeying, they betray the very thing Nietzsche warned them never to abandon, the will to power, the drive to overcome. Nietzsche's philosophy was not a gift, it was a warning. He knew that men who traded responsibility for ease would not simply grow soft. They would grow hollow. Their strength would not be stolen. They would surrender it willingly. And this is the hidden cost of sedation. Once a man abandons meaning for comfort, he does not just lose his edge, he loses himself. But instead of responsibility, most men have chosen sedation, and that choice carries a hidden cost. He sleeps in a bed softer than any king's. Food arrives without labor. Screens pour endless entertainment into his lap. On paper, this is paradise. In reality, it is the most efficient prison ever built. The bars are invisible. The chains are velvet. Men call it comfort, but comfort is the predator. Society has rewritten the script. Discipline, once the foundation of strength, is now called toxic. Struggle, once a badge of honor, is labeled dysfunction. What remains is indulgence, sold as success. Work just enough, eat whatever you crave, relax as often as possible. Entire industries exist to keep you sedated, delivering dopamine in every form from sugar to streaming to sex without intimacy. The result is a body that survives while the will decays. The science is clear. Sedentary life corrodes muscle, blunts energy, and weakens the mind. A man who avoids effort doesn't feel alive. He feels heavy, tired, restless. Yet he interprets this exhaustion as laziness, never recognizing it as the byproduct of indulgence. Nietzsche understood this long before the data. Growth emerges only in resistance. Muscles tear under strain and rebuild stronger. The will cracks under struggle and returns harder. Without that pressure, nothing sharpens, nothing rises. But the modern world convinces men otherwise. It tells them pain is a sign of error, that effort is unnecessary. It flatters them with shortcuts, work smarter, not harder. But the smarter path often means no path at all. A man who never pushes against the weight of life is not conserving energy, he is surrendering vitality. Notice the contrast. A soldier climbs from mud and blood with eyes alive, sharper for every trial. A modern man wakes from 10 hours of sleep and still yawns his way through the day. His comfort does not renew him, it erodes him. The edges dull, the fire dims, the hunger dies. This is not failure in the obvious sense. No bones are broken, no wounds bleed. The decay shows itself in quieter ways, the body softening, the will evaporating, the spirit sedated. And men, misled by the illusion of ease, call it peace. But Nietzsche warned that real peace is not the absence of struggle, it is mastery through it. Without resistance, men do not rest, they rot. And yet, this decay doesn't show up as broken bones. It shows up as something quieter, suppressed rage. He smiles, he nods, he says nothing. To the outside world, he looks calm, composed, controlled. But inside, something boils. Modern men mistake silence for strength, but silence is not peace. It is pressure, and pressure, left unrelieved, always finds a crack. Psychologists call it repression. The instinct rises by anger, fear, hunger, desire, but instead of expression, it is buried. Buried under politeness, under forced laughter, under the performance of control. The man tells himself he has mastered his emotions. In reality, he has only locked them in a basement where they rot and ferment. Nietzsche warned of this exact danger. He believed instincts are not diseases to be cured, but forces to be understood and mastered. Suppress them and they turn against you. A man who denies his own aggression does not become peaceful. He becomes haunted. The rage does not vanish. It mutates, leaking through sarcasm, passive resistance, or sudden explosions that seem to come from nowhere. Look closer. The man who claims he is fine clenches his jaw in traffic. The man who never raises his voice snaps at strangers over nothing. The man who insists he's calm finds himself drinking more, eating more, scrolling longer. Each act a release valve for pressure. He refuses to acknowledge these are not accidents, they are symptoms of denial. The cost is not only psychological. Suppressed anger is linked to ulcers, hypertension, heart disease. The body carries what the mind refuses to face. What men call composure often leaves scars that never show on the skin. This is the horror of silent rage. It deceives the man most of all. He believes he is controlled, but in truth he is controlled by what he hides. The longer he pretends, the less he recognizes himself. Each unspoken word, each swallowed instinct, chips away at his clarity. He stops knowing what he feels, and eventually what he is. Nietzsche's verdict was brutal. He argued that instincts must be mastered, not erased. To deny them is to create a counterfeit peace, a performance that only deepens decay. The choice is not between anger and calm. The choice is between control and collapse. And nowhere does this suppression play out more brutally than in relationships. He thinks it is passion. The late-night arguments, the tears that turn into laughter, the cycles of breaking and reconciling. He tells himself this intensity is proof of love. In truth, it is chaos. And chaos is not love. It is control. Some women do not seek connection. They seek power. They test boundaries. Not because they want to understand, but because they want to dominate. Their weapon is not violence, but volatility. By shifting between affection and withdrawal, they keep men unstable, hooked on uncertainty. Attachment psychologists call it the intermittent reward cycle. The brain becomes addicted not to affection itself, but to the unpredictable rhythm of affection withheld and returned. The man believes he is noble for enduring it. He convinces himself he is patient, supportive, understanding. But in reality, he has surrendered his clarity. Every time he tolerates manipulation disguised as emotion, he hands over control. He becomes less a partner and more a tool, an object that responds on command to her chaos. Nietzsche saw this dynamic long before clinical psychology gave it a name. He warned that the one who cannot walk away becomes prey. Love without boundaries is not devotion, it is slavery. A man who makes another person's moods his compass is not leading a relationship. He is orbiting it. And orbits, by design, never escape. The trap is cruel because it flatters. Chaos is framed as depth, volatility as passion. The man tells himself that enduring pain proves loyalty, when in fact it proves dependence. What he calls maturity is often just fear of being alone. What he calls sacrifice is fear of losing validation. The cost is gradual but absolute. His instincts erode, his confidence corrodes. He becomes cautious, apologetic, hyper-aware of every shift in tone. His strength is no longer directed outward toward life, but inward toward survival. The chaos consumes him, and yet he stays, mistaking the sickness for love. This is the chaos test. It is not designed to be passed. It is designed to expose whether a man knows who he is without approval. Fail, and he becomes prey. Pass, and he walks away. Nietzsche's lesson was clear. Strength is not shown in how much chaos a man can endure. It is shown in how firmly he refuses to kneel before it. But this trap doesn't just come from women. It's enforced by society itself. The rules are written, but not in ink, in bias. A man who raises his voice is aggressive. A woman who does the same is assertive. A man who sets a boundary is controlling. A woman who mirrors him is empowered. The language changes depending on the player, but the verdict is always the same. Male strength is punished, female chaos excused. Society frames this as fairness. In truth, it is calibration, a system engineered to keep men apologetic for their nature. The moral code is not a code at all, it is a leash. Nietzsche saw this in the 19th century when he dismantled the illusion of morality. He argued that what people call virtue is often just strategy, a way for the weak to restrain the strong. Today it wears a different mask, but the function is identical. Consider the workplace. A man demands excellence and he is labeled toxic. A woman demands the same and she is celebrated for leadership. In relationships, a man who refuses manipulation is called cold. A woman who refuses is protecting her peace. Men are measured by outcomes, what they produce, provide, achieve. Women are measured by intention, how they feel, how they frame, how they narrate their choices. One standard is concrete, the other is fluid. One burdens, the other absolves. This asymmetry corrodes men, not because it is invisible, but because it is constant. They are told to soften, to compromise, to adapt, while being assured that this is what maturity looks like. They are instructed to bend, and when bending fails to earn respect, they are told to bend further. Each concession is framed as growth, when in fact it is erosion. Nietzsche would not have called this equality. He would have called it domestication. The taming of will through moral pressure, a culture that praises weakness as empathy and labels strength as danger, is not balancing power, it is redistributing it. And men, conditio, ned to obey, rarely question the trade. They believe that if they follow the script, stay kind, stay patient, stay agreeable, They will finally be chosen, respected, rewarded, but the script is not written for their benefit. It is written to keep them tame. This is the rigged game, men bound by results, women excused by intentions, morality twisted into a leash. And when men follow these rules, thinking they'll earn respect, something darker takes root: resentment. It doesn't happen with an explosion, it happens in silence. A man gives and gives and gives, loyalty, effort, sacrifice, but the recognition never comes. At first, he shrugs it off. He tells himself it doesn't matter, that strength is supposed to endure without reward. But endurance without acknowledgement doesn't make a man stronger. It corrodes him. Psychologists describe resentment as anger left unresolved, anger denied an outlet. Unlike rage, it doesn't burn hot. It festers cold. It infiltrates thought, dulls motivation, and blurs purpose. The man who once pushed forward with certainty begins to hesitate. He questions whether anything he does matters. Each unrewarded act becomes a weight, pressing his ambition into the ground. Nietzsche saw this dynamic as one of the most destructive forces within the human psyche. He argued that betrayal mixed with guilt produces decay. A man betrayed by others feels anger. A man who feels guilty for allowing it to happen begins to rot from the inside. This is the true horror of resentment. It doesn't just sour his view of others. It makes him despise himself. The signs are subtle but unmistakable. His posture slumps. His voice grows quieter. He no longer sets goals because he no longer believes goals will lead anywhere. He stays loyal to people who do not value him and loyal to systems that exploit him. Not because he trusts them, but because he cannot admit that his loyalty was misplaced. To face that truth would mean admitting years were wasted. So he stays, he rots. Resentment hardens men into shadows of themselves. They are not volatile, but vacant, not angry, but hollow. What once was fire becomes ash, and ash cannot ignite again. Nietzsche would have called this the slow suicide of the will, the gradual erasure of vitality through unacknowledged betrayal. What begins as patience ends as paralysis. What begins as loy ultimately ends as a refusal to live fully. Resentment doesn't scream, it whispers, it convinces a man that his silence is strength, when in truth it is surrender. And when resentment kills ambition, men slip into the most dangerous illusion of all, mistaking silence for peace. He tells himself he is calm. He tells himself he is in control. But the truth is simpler, darker. He has given up. Each time he swallows his words, each time he lowers his gaze, each time he avoids conflict, a piece of him disappears. This is not peace. This is erosion. Conflict avoidance psychology calls it the fawn response, the instinct to appease in order to survive. It feels like strategy, but it is surrender. Restraint is when a man holds his fire because he chooses not to use it. Submission is when he buries the fire because he is afraid it might escape. The difference is subtle, but the cost is immense. The shrinking begins quietly. He lets comments slide. He avoids arguments. He chooses silence over honesty. At first it seems harmless, a way to keep the peace. But peace built on avoidance is not peace at all. It is the construction of a cage, one compromise at a time, and soon he is the one who vanishes into it. Nietzsche warned against this kind of life, the slow suffocation of instinct. He argued that strength is not measured by how well one avoids standing firm, but by the willingness to stand alone when necessary. A man who shrinks cannot protect. cannot lead, cannot even recognize himself. He becomes invisible in his own story. Observe him carefully. His words grow careful, his movements cautious. He laughs at what he doesn't find funny, agrees with what he doesn't believe, accepts what he doesn't respect. This is not diplomacy, this is disappearance. What he calls maturity is fear of rejection. What he calls calm is the silence of a man who has been erased. The horror is not that others fail to see him, it is that he no longer sees himself. Every act of shrinking makes the mirror blur, and when he does look, he cannot decide if the reflection staring back is real or just a mask shaped by everyone else's expectations. Peace that costs dignity is neol.
Of peace, it is erosion, and once the erosion begins, it rarely stops. And yet even as they shrink, men keep telling themselves the same lie. I'll fix it tomorrow.
He says the same thing every night. Tomorrow he will leave the job that drains him. Tomorrow he will begin the discipline he keeps postponing. Tomorrow he will face the truth he avoids. But tomorrow is not a plan, it is an opiate. Psychologists know this cycle well. Procrastination is rarely laziness, it is fear disguised as delay. The man convinces himself that waiting makes him wise, that patience means control. But time without action is not maturity, it is denial. Each postponed decision is not neutral, it is rot. Comfort whispers the lie. It tells him there is no rush, that later is safer, that he can always begin when he feels ready. But readiness never comes. Meanwhile, the years advance in silence. Opportunities that exist once vanish forever. The strength that could have been forged in his youth dissolves into fatigue. The season of fire becomes the season of regret. Nietzsche despised this illusion of time. He warned that man wastes life waiting for the right moment, forgetting that the right moment is always now. To believe that life owes you more days is the greatest lie of all. Life does not wait. It erodes. It closes doors without knocking twice. Look at the man who believes in later. His courage dulls, his clarity blurs. He adapts to pain instead of ending it. He builds routines around problems instead of cutting them out. The longer he waits, the heavier the weight becomes until he cannot move at all. By the time he admits the cost, the years are gone. This is why comfort is more dangerous than suffering. Pain demands response. Comfort lulls him into paralysis. He is not destroyed by what he endures. He is destroyed by what he postpones. Delayed courage always becomes permanent regret, and once regret takes root, no apology to himself can erase it. And this brings us to the most brutal truth of all, the cost of ignoring the warnings. Men are not broken because the world is cruel. They are broken because they abandoned themselves. Comfort killed their fire. Silence buried their strength. Fear erased their clarity. What remains is not a man in full, but a husk that performs the role while the core has already surrendered. Nietzsche warned that pain is not the enemy. Pain is the signal that life is real, the raw edge that forces growth. Without it, nothing sharpens, nothing rises. The end is not marked by wounds or failures, but by the refusal to struggle at all. That is the true collapse, not when a man is defeated, but when he stops fighting. The evidence is everywhere. Look at the man who chooses ease over effort. He isn't happy, he's sedated. Look at the man who avoids conflict. He isn't peaceful, he's erased. Look at the man who keeps waiting for tomorrow. He isn't patient, he's already too late. Each one tells himself he is safe, but safety is the slowest death of all. Pleasure will not save him. It only deepens the cage. What he needs is pressure, the resistance that awakens what comfort smothers. Muscles only grow under strain, will only hardens under burden. A man who seeks only calm will never discover his capacity for fire. Nietzsche's truth was brutal. Life is suffering, but that suffering is the birthplace of meaning. To reject it is to reject life itself. Men today are not weak because the world oppresses them. They are weak because they willingly traded their struggle for sedation, their instincts for approval, their will for silence. The question is not whether life is hard, the question is whether you will face it before it is too late. Every year wasted in denial becomes a year unrecoverable. Every comfort embraced without struggle becomes a nail in the coffin of potential. Men are not broken because of what was done to them. They are broken because they refused to become who they could be. Nietzsche's warning still stands. The world will not wait for you. How long are you planning to? The truth is simple, but it cuts deep. Men are not broken because of what the world did to them. They are broken because they abandoned themselves. Comfort dulled their fire. Silence suffocated their will. Fear erased their clarity. Nietzsche never promised happiness. He promised struggle, and through it, meaning. Pain is not your enemy. It is the proof you are alive. The question is not whether life is hard. It always is. The question is whether you will face it before it is too late. Every day you wait, the decay spreads. Every warning ignored becomes regret. And when the silence finally settles, no second chance will come. Nietzsche's warning still stands. The world will not wait for you. How long are you planning to? If this spoke to you, subscribe to Mind Mythos. Share this with the one person who needs to hear it, because the clock is already ticking and the truth will not wait.